Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Nigeria is situated along 853 kilometers of coastline, and the country's waters have a diverse range of marine species. Unfortunately, the exploitation of these waters continues to threaten marine life and coastal communities. In the final episode of the second season of Go Wild, Arise environmental correspondent Leila Johnson-Salame reports on the growing threats to marine ecosystems and why Nigeria urgently needs marine protected areas.
The fish is many before, but as they build house and the place, the water can't be occupied. So the fish there very many for inside ground. Each person go out, the fish not many again.
5 years ago, Happy was catching about 10 fish a day, but now she struggles to catch more than 3. A 70% decline in her supply. This is Ogombo, a community by the waters in Lagos. Pollution and widespread land occupation are negatively affecting the population of aquatic species. And now, Happy and several other fishers are struggling to survive.
All those places where they put dirty, person not fit go that side again because the dustbin too overflow.
With every breath that we take and every drop that we drink, we're connected to the ocean. On average, about 60% of our bodies are made up of water, an essential nutrient to the life of every cell. But when it comes to protecting the water around us, humanity has not done a very great job. Marine ecosystems are heavily affected by human activity. And here's the thing, we've always relied on our oceans for food, water, and as a route for trade and exploration. Covering about 72% of the Earth and supplying half of its oxygen, the ocean is our planet's life support system. So I'm going on a journey to find out how we can better protect Nigeria's oceans and help to sustain coastal communities.
My visit to Ogombo reaffirmed one thing, that scientists are sounding the alarm about the poor state of the ocean for a very good reason. The less we look after our environment, the harder it is for humanity to survive. To the east of Lagos is the oil-rich Niger Delta, a region that has sadly been damaged for many years to come. Illegal oil refineries and pipeline vandalism are prevalent, but decades of negligence from major oil giants is also a devastating cause. Millions of liters of oil have been spilled across this environment. Lawsuits have been filed and some settlements have been reached, but the spills continue to happen. This is Nembe in Bayelsa State. In 2021, according to the state government, about 2 million barrels of oil and gas spilled into this environment from a well operated by a Nigerian energy conglomerate, the ITO Group. The group, however, denies this figure. The Federal House of Representatives resolved to investigate this incident in June 2022, which reportedly killed millions of seabirds and aquatic species. This is a region that's desperately in need of protection. According to the UN ODC, about 60% of the fish in the Gulf of Guinea breed in the Niger Delta mangroves. Yet, the degradation of these ecosystems has decreased fish populations and increased cases of waterborne diseases like cholera and typhoid. Tunde Morakinyo is a passionate conservationist, and like many people, he's extremely concerned about the loss of mangroves in the Niger Delta.
It's quite depressing because the mangroves which are just the habitat just on the coast are a really, really important breeding ground for fish. And now with the cutting of the mangroves for firewood Clearing of mangroves because of urban development and because of oil pollution in particular, the mangroves in Nigeria are becoming devastated. So the fisheries of Nigeria are not only under attack by overfishing offshore, but by the destruction of the mangroves and overfishing in the inland creeks of the Niger Delta.
Far too often, beautiful creatures like manatees and sea turtles are seen chopped up or sold along the roadside. All 5 sea turtle species commonly found in Nigeria's waters are listed by the IUCN as either vulnerable, endangered, or critically endangered. Yet, these are species listed as protected under Nigeria's Endangered Species Act. To Bolaji Alonge, a Lagos-based photographer and diver, the loss of marine life is devastating.
Do you know there are places where we still have manatees? These big freshwater creatures. We used to have them all around, but you know, there's a lot of them killing over the years, but we still have some. We need to protect these things. You know, once you have a place flourishing, it leads to people wanting to go to see these animals in their environment. But there's a problem to that as well, especially in Nigeria, where many people, once they see these animals, all they think about is how to eat them. If you go to parts of Lagos, I'm not going to mention where, you find crocodiles tied and sold to restaurants, and these are animals we should protect. People are beginning to complain in all these parts of Nigeria. In the villages, in the rural parts, they are complaining. Hunters are complaining now that there are less animals. We go out there, we don't see enough animals as our fathers used to see. So what does that mean? It means these animals are beginning to go.
The key question is, how do we protect Nigeria's waters? I met up with Oyerunke Adigbile, a marine biologist who spends her time working to protect Nigeria's marine wildlife. We visited the Kids Beach Garden in Lagos, Nigeria's first sustainable beach.
Nigeria's marine wildlife is severely threatening today. Marine protected areas are important in order to protect the marine species, to ensure that they do not go into extinction. Marine protected areas are areas within the ocean designated by government or other legal entities where human activities are limited or prohibited.
So marine protected areas protect ocean life. While scientists recommend that no less than 30% of the world's oceans today should be protected, to conserve marine wildlife and also for the enormous benefits that the ocean provides to humans. According to the United Nations, just 8% of the world's oceans are protected today. At the UN Ocean Conference in Lisbon in June 2022, philanthropic organizations committed $1 billion to help protect 30% of the world's oceans by 2030, which is roughly equal to all philanthropic finances for MPAs and habitat protection over the past decade. This is a huge development. And here in Nigeria, a country endowed with several water bodies and 853 kilometers of coastline, there are currently no formally established marine protected areas.
That Nigeria has no MPAs is affecting our waters in so many ways. One of it is unregulated fisheries, for example. Since we have no MPAs, people are able to go anywhere in the ocean to fish limit resources that are limited in supply. It's also affecting in terms of environmental degradation, whereby any kind of vessels goes into the water and damages the ecosystem.
MPAs encourage sustainable fishing while also protecting marine life, consequently increasing the catch of fishes like Happy.
Imagine a scenario where Nigeria's fisheries collapse. we're already facing very, very tough economic conditions. Just when you think it can't get any worse, it gets worse. The fisheries off the coast of West Africa and the fisheries off the coast of Nigeria, in particular, some of the most important, some of the most productive in the world, and some of the most important. And a huge percentage of the protein that is eaten by the Nigerian population comes from our offshore fisheries.
In 2020, the federal government of Nigeria announced that it will be creating 10 new national parks. Apoi Creek Reserve and Edumanom Forest Reserve in Bayelsa State made the list, and it's been stated that these two locations would serve as marine parks. More recently, Nigeria's Minister of Environment, Mr. Mohammed Abdullahi, said that the government is working with an environmental NGO to develop a framework for marine protected areas. The National Park Service of Nigeria is involved in the process of establishing MPAs. So I spoke to the Conservator General, Dr. Ibrahim Goni.
Two of these new national parks are marine in Bayelsa State. We have the Apoi Creek Forest Reserve and the Edumenu Forest Reserve, all in Bayelsa. Mr. President has also approved and released the sum of 500 million naira for their takeoff. The Ministry of Justice is currently working on the act establishing the former national park so that the new national parks can be incorporated. And they have so far drawn a proclamation statement for Mr. President, which he will lay before the National Assembly. And when there's concurrence with the National Assembly, the federal government can now go into these national parks and take them over from the various state government.
Rachel Ikeme is the founder of the Southwest Niger Delta Forest Project. She says that Apoi and Edumanom might not be suitable MPAs as they're located inland.
Describing a place like Apoi Creek as a marine protected area can be very confusing. There are certain areas, of course, on land that are not too far from the sea. I mean, for Edumanom, it's about 30 kilometers away from the sea. Really, they can get away with describing it as a marine protected area. But the question is, should that be so?
To call an area that protects swamp forests and mangroves a marine protected area is wrong. It doesn't protect marine habitat. It protects inland habitat. If you look at the word marine protected area, neither Apoi Creek nor Edumanom qualify as MPAs. If Nigeria is serious about having an MPA, we need to have a marine protected area that includes part of the coastline and part of the Atlantic Ocean.
I voiced these concerns to the Conservator General. Here's what he had to say.
An MPA can be land or water. It depends on, and the size may even be less than 10 meters. It may be more than 100 hectares, depending on what is available to you. So when you are declaring an area as a national park, whether inland or on water, it does not matter. That is why the two areas that are declared can qualify for MPA.
If you look at the name, Marine Protected Area, marine means sea, coast, ocean. Apoi Creek is, 20, 30 or 40 kilometers inland. It is not on the coast. Apoi Creek does not contain part of the Atlantic Ocean. So it is not a marine protected area.
Controversies regarding whether it's a marine area, it's an extra habitat, and so qualifies to be a marine area or not, I think should be played down in such a way that it doesn't take away from the importance that is attached to the conservation of natural habitats and the conservation of species is very important to also be able to clarify these terms in this public space so that people don't get confused.
How the oil and gas industry is likely to respond to the establishment of MPAs is an important factor to consider. After all, most of Nigeria's revenue is still generated from crude oil.
The oil and gas sector can only embrace this and support it, promote it, and also anticipate being given the opportunity to invest in moving this forward. What we have seen really is that, our water bodies have been polluted, biodiversity, that's marine biodiversity, endangered. And now that, we're moving in the right direction, creating marine protected areas, the oil and gas industry can only see an opportunity to support the government in rolling back some of the damages that, some of our activities have done.
I think one of the things that we should do is, do a bit of benchmarking and see what other countries has done. I mean, we take, for example, Norway. Norway, they've been doing this for a while. And they've taken learnings from the North Sea and see how they can protect their oceans and the MPAs. And as you can see, I mean, by the coastal areas, because you have what you call the swamp and the mangroves, where most of these things really happen, actually, and to see how these things flow. But it's also looking at dedicating certain areas whereby the impact is going to be much minimum based on current flows and stuff like that.
Nigeria is signatory to international laws. Therefore, our marine ecosystems should receive a certain level of protection. There are also creative ways to protect Earth's waters that are going on all over the world. A good example is Seychelles, an island republic situated in the Indian Ocean, where a debt for nature swap is conserving the country's waters.
Debt for nature swaps give countries the room to have their foreign debts cancelled or reduced by a creditor, in exchange for the debtor making financial commitments to conservation. This is an innovative model that Nigeria can benefit from. These swaps have taken place in the past to preserve tropical forests, but the Seychelles deal is the first to focus on marine conservation, and the first to use loan capital to help finance the swap. I had the opportunity to visit the Seychelles in December 2021. Visiting a marine park and experiencing the abundance of aquatic life was a beautiful experience.
I think Seychelles has just 439 kilometers of coastline, and Nigeria has 853 kilometers coastline. That's double. So if Seychelles can tap into such opportunities, I don't know what Nigeria is waiting for, especially with the amount of foreign debt that we have. If we're able to offset some of our foreign debt for protecting our marine environment, which would be of value to us in developing the economy of the coastal people, I think is an opportunity to jump into.
I have gone diving in different parts of the world, and then what you see is like there are protected areas. These areas are areas where you can dive. There's a place in Oman, for example, called the aquarium. So people are not allowed to fish in all these places. So you get to the marine life in these parts gets really to flourish.
Over 16,000 kilometers west of Seychelles are the volcanic Galapagos Islands, a province of Ecuador situated in the Pacific Ocean. Home to a diverse range of marine species like dolphins, sea lions, and sea turtles, these islands are a major tourism destination. Wild Aid is involved in marine protection here. I had a conversation with the founder and president, Peter Knights, on what the organization has been able to achieve and how. While approaches to establishing MPAs may differ across several island and coastal nations, there may be something to learn.
Well, the big lesson for Galapagos is it's one thing to set up a marine reserve, put it down on paper for it to be lines on a map. It's another thing to actually enforce it and make it real. And so what we've done in the Galapagos Islands since 1998, when the marine reserve was declared, is help the Ecuadorian government put the proper protection systems in there. And that means training personnel, it means having the right equipment, and actually making it a marine reserve as opposed to just lines on the map.
There are several steps to take to establish MPAs, and it begins with political will. More so, the government needs to enforce existing laws that protect marine wildlife, as species will still be vulnerable outside of protected zones. It is clear that the federal government is looking to establish the first MPAs in the Niger Delta. And to Adigbile, there is no better place to start.
In the Niger Delta, you can find dolphins, you can find whales, you can find sea turtles in large quantities. So I believe that kind of area should have an MPA in place.
Meanwhile, Nigeria's waters and aquatic life have both received some protection based on traditional and religious beliefs. This is often not talked about or given credit. Fishing festivals such as the Argungu Fishing and Cultural Festival in Kebbi State restrict fish harvesting to specific times of the year. Several other communities exist across Nigeria that either prohibit the consumption of certain aquatic species or have harvesting schedules. These customary zones play a significant role in keeping our water ecosystems healthy, and it's widely argued that they should receive formal recognition from the government.
Traditional forms of protection are extremely important. Fisher folk for generations have recognized the importance of conserving or protecting marine resources, and they understand the fact that fish have breeding cycles, and when the fish are spawning, or when the fish are when fingerlings are growing up, it's good to have a closed season so the fish are given a chance to grow. There are numerous communities in the Niger Delta that have closed seasons for fisheries in their area of jurisdiction. And I think if Nigeria is to establish a marine protected area, it will be very, very important to work with the local stakeholders, the local fishermen, the traditional rulers, the fishing cooperatives, so that they can play a key role in protecting these marine protected areas and ensuring that there's a closed season. Unless you have community buy-in, you'll never protect these areas.
To feeding, they affect me. So now, I don't fine. Say make I see small money, I go fit do business. Maybe I'll figure that one the money.
The hope is that through the establishment of MPAs, fishing communities can thrive once more, as well as marine and freshwater biodiversity. It may be months or years before these protected areas are up and running in Nigeria, but once established, the overexploitation and destruction of Nigeria's waters should be brought under control, and hopefully become a subject of the past. Layla Johnson Salami, Arise News.
Well, Layla Johnson Salami joins us now to have a quick conversation on that wonderful report. Layla, it's good to have you. Welcome back. Good to see you.
Good morning. I've missed you. How are you all doing?
Welcome back.
I know.
Layla.
I know we say welcome back like I've been gone somewhere.
Yeah, we haven't seen you on the set.
I know. I have missed coming on.
Did you see how my eyes brighten up when I saw you walk into the studio?
Yes.
It's nice to have you.
Trust me, I couldn't sleep last night because all I was thinking about was coming to see you.
Yeah. All right, team. A wonderful report. Again, we had one of your reports last week, not to distract from what we've just watched, but last week I said that it was a great report, but it's very uncomfortable listening and watching, and that's definitely the sentiment today. Wonderful research, fantastic interviews, but yeah, it makes you very uncomfortable to hear that, especially for people who live in Lagos, and the fact that we are so vulnerable to water. You would think that at a state and federal level, there would be a lot more appetite when you look across, first of all, your experience reporting on environment in this country, what is the consensus been in terms of your experience when it comes to appetite, political will to do the needful when it comes to the environment?
Good question, because, you know, Femi, if the political will was 100% there, then half of the things that we're actually here discussing, we wouldn't have to, because these species that we're talking about, most of them are protected by Nigerian law, but these are laws that are not enforced. So you don't enforce the laws that exist, these species are going to be vulnerable. And what we're seeing is that there is definitely, there's definitely some sort of an appetite, but it's never anything near being close to enough. For example, with the topic of marine protected areas, the fact that Nigeria has over 800 kilometers of coastline and we literally have no formally established marine protected area is a huge problem, because we have to be able to protect our fisheries. If not, like Bolaji said in the documentary, people continue and begin to complain. There are no more fish in the waters. We can't, you know, you need the stock to be there. By having MPAs, you have these protected zones where fishing is not allowed, pollution in that particular zone is completely wiped out, or whatever the case may be. And because of that, the fishes are able to multiply, grow in number, and then they can spill over into the rest of the ocean, consequently increasing the catch of all of the fisher folk around coastal communities. So these zones are very important for us to establish. And honestly, I would say that the more we report, you can see that there is concern, and you can see that the government is trying. For example, it's not as if the government isn't establishing MPAs. The government is currently trying to establish MPAs. But the big question is the government going about it in the right way? You have conservationists and experts who argue that the government is not doing that because Apoy Creek in Bayelsa State and Edumanom Forest Reserve, it's argued, cannot serve as marine protected areas, yet the government would like to designate these two parks as marine parks when they are formally established as part of the new national parks in Nigeria. So it's a bit problematic, because we have to be able to get these definitions right. Is it a marine park or not? Yes, it should be protected, and yes, it's an area that should be protected, but if it's a protected swamp forest, let's call it that instead. So I had to put all of the arguments out there. As you can see, the National Park Service still stand by the fact that they believe these are going to be marine parks, and that's what they're going with. But you have people that argue that it's not the case. So the fight is always there and it's always on. But the good news is that something is actually happening. And the good news is that it looks as though this is going to happen first in the Niger Delta, which needs more protection than any other region in Nigeria, and also has the most abundance of marine species, dolphins, whales, sharks, all sorts.
It was interesting to hear that, because I had no idea that we had all of that marine animal in the Niger Delta. But I want to congratulate you and Wild Aid for really exposing all of these troubles that we're facing at this point, especially, with our environment and endangered species. But I wanted to ask you, because we don't have these MPAs at this point, how can we continue to encourage sustainable fishing at this point?
Well, right now, one thing that's important is recognizing the role that traditional and religious beliefs and customary beliefs play in protecting our waters, so our oceans and our freshwater bodies. Now, there are many communities that exist across Nigeria and all along the Gulf of Guinea where eating certain marine species is completely prohibited. Harvesting is restricted to certain times, and we need to start having some sort of way to formally recognize these zones that do exist, because they are playing a role in protecting our waters. But what's important here is that it's not as if fisherfolk are oblivious to the fact that there are less fish in the water. They know, and they're the ones complaining. Like Happy, who we spoke to in this piece, the day that we visited her in Ogombo, she was literally saying, this time last year I was catching 10 to 12, this time 4 years ago I was catching 10 to 12 fish a day. Now it's about 2 or 3 fish if I'm lucky, and even the size of the fish has gone down. So I could get pretty big fish before, but now it's only the little fish that I'm getting around here. So you see that this is a problem that's affecting a lot of people living in coastal communities, and something has to be done as soon as possible, and done seriously. A proper marine area protecting proper marine wildlife and marine species. It's crucial for Nigeria, also because our waters are important to the rest of West Africa. Let's not forget, most of the fish breed in the mangroves in the Niger Delta. 60%, that's a huge number.
All right, Lila, I mean, you're very correct. I mean, two quick areas where I'd like to intervene. First is the part of the MPAs and the politics of it, are things that are fairly straightforward. Elsewhere, when it gets to Nigeria, it becomes an issue. And the issue of the MPAs, is one. I'm aware, of course, that there are more than 400 of such in 65 countries globally. India alone has about 31. South Africa has about 40. As you said, we do not even have one in any formal manner. And I think, it makes sense that, to first deal with the Niger Delta because of the peculiar, it's the kind of a thing that Ken Saro-Wiwa has been talking about, since in those days. But then different parts of Nigeria's coastline have different needs, from Niger Delta to Ondo, and all the lagoons there, and then to Lagos, different needs. I just hope that politics will not stand in the way any further, to do the needful. I don't know why it has to be like that.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Secondly, the other area, you were very correct when you brought in the part of Argungu Fishing Festival. Like Ogombo, there is a village in Lagos called Oshoroko. Oshoroko is the part of Lagos where they used to have one of the most thriving fishing festivals in Lagos, in the southwest. And it's an area where the ocean meets with the lagoon. You have a bit of that at La Campagne Tropicana too. And the reason why a fishing festival was sited there is because at a particular time in the year, around July, that's where the two bodies of waters meet. And then a large pool of fishes are deposited into the lagoon, from the Atlantic Ocean. And that's for like 3 days. Those are the days that the villagers and the fishermen go out and make a kill. Guess what? In the last few years, it has practically dried up. You mentioned Ogombo, where you used to do like 10, 100 fishes, and now you'll be struggling to do 10. In Oshoroko, it's totally gone.
Wow,
and it's because of what we're dealing with. So the MPAs are keenly important.
They
Protect
really
the areas that need protection. And I hope that somebody in government high up there, especially at the federal level, I think that states can deal with some of these things if they were allowed. But once it comes to waters, wetlands, etc., there is a perpetual struggle between the federal government and state government, especially with Lagos State.
But you're right as well, Mr. Stevens, saying, it just has to be done properly. If this is going to be done, it has to be done properly. And we have to take into account that there are different effects in different regions of Nigeria. So what may work in the Niger Delta may not work in Lagos. And the political will to ensure that you treat it uniquely to every situation where you're establishing a zone is key for this to succeed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Also, go ahead, Oji.
No, please.
What a lady. Thank you. Oh, gosh. Thanks, Oji. When we looked at not only this report, but last week's report, we were talking about how people within coastal communities unfortunately do their own selves a disservice because of their behavior, and they do that because of a lack of alternative. I believe the fish's name was Happy in your report today. Happy complained clearly that they are hungry because they have no fish. Do you know what alternative they have currently when it comes to the fact that they don't have as many fishes as they had last year, for example? And then secondly, do you think, was it part of your conversation about, do you within your communities take responsibility for the degradation too? 100% the government has a job to do, but have you contributed to the degradation that you are suffering from?
There we go. That's the important question, because everyone here is responsible to one extent or one degree or another, and you have to be able to take responsibility. And from what I know, there is that sense of responsibility that's there, but that it comes more from a place of worry that, this is the case that we're in now, this is the situation now, there are literally no fish to fish, what do we actually do? So you can tell that people are aware and people know and recognize, but without the proper education on sustainable fishing, which is key, people are not going to know that what they're doing is wrong. So teaching people how to sustainably fish, having incentives for fisher folk as well. So for example, there are so many sea turtles and big marine species that are protected but get caught up in the nets of fishers, right? And fishers don't know that, quite frankly, these are species that need to go back into the water. Do not eat them, do not kill them, just put it back into the water. But if the government incentivizes them and says, for every X amount that you put back or whatever, you get X amounts of new nets or this or that. These are ways that you can get people on board to realize that, look, there's good in doing good, right? But if people don't know, I mean, what is sustainability to someone that doesn't understand the concept of sustainability fully? But that being said, again, it's not as if, like I said, they don't. There is a tiny bit of awareness, but genuinely not enough to protect Nigeria's waters and to protect their livelihood. So you can tell that people do know, and they know it's not all the government's fault. It's not all, you know, pointing fingers and blaming everyone. We're all to blame. But there is a lot of worry and concern because these are people who, quite frankly, right now have nothing. They don't have enough fish to eat for themselves, and they don't have enough fish to sell. Double whammy.
Wow.
One other area. Oh, did you go?
Please, Oji, let me speak.
Please,
Can I speak?
I mean, it's such a topical subject because, you know, I was just talking about, you know, juxtaposing your visit to Seychelles, the marine life there. You know, besides the fact that they have this appropriate MPA in place, what else are they doing correctly?
Hold on. I actually have, you know, this morning, right, I was looking up some really, really cool stats on the Seychelles. And in 2016, when the Nature Conservancy helped them to restructure their debt in this way, they restricted $22 million of the government's debt in exchange for the government agreeing to protect 30% of its marine areas. Now, today, the Seychelles is on track to protect 400,000 square kilometers of ocean, and that's roughly the size of Germany.
Wow.
So, and this is since 2016 that we're talking about. And now this small island republic is on track to protect 400,000 square kilometers of ocean, which is huge. It's really boosted marine tourism. The Seychelles have had serious issues with their marine biodiversity for a while, the corals, everything like that. But having these marine parks come back in has really replenished the oceans, and you can see it while you're there. You have tour guides that take you around, and you literally just look into the water and you are covered. You are surrounded with an abundance of fish, and these fish are allowed to breed in these zones, so then they can spill over into the rest of the ocean, and hey, there's more fish in the Seychelles, right? So, I mean, it's such a great thing to do, and I think it is something, if the Nigerian government isn't already looking into, that we should look into. If we can restructure our debts in a way that takes conservation into account, why are we not considering it? If Seychelles can do it, why can't we do it? You know, these are the questions that we need to ask.
That actually answers the question I was hoping to ask on the tourism component of it, and Seychelles, you know, provides a good case study, you know, to
But you want to go to these countries and see all the go snorkeling and this and that.
So we should have that here, absolutely.
But you know we can. Even off the coast of Lagos, we have dolphins. So, you know, it's just about cleaning up our waters, and this can be done. So fingers crossed, guys. Let's keep on pushing.
Well done. Well done, well done, well done.
Thank
you. Thank you. I hope we see you again next week.
So we are taking a break from Go Wild. This is the final episode of season 2, but we will be back in Q4 this year with more of Go Wild. But you'll still see me with other reports.
All right.
You know, other stuff.
Well done, Leila Johnson Salami, our environmental correspondent.